A delayed game is eventually good. A rushed game is bad forever. This applies to many Nintendo games. Metroid Prime 4, for instance, has yet to receive a trailer, but this quote doubles down on The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Because, oh my god, this game is not just good, it's great. Even beyond that, it's perfect. So now, let us begin the review of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. One of the most anticipated parts of this game is the story, so I'll just start right away there. Tears of the Kingdom is set right after Breath of the Wild, or at least a few months or years in between. It's nothing like the insane jump that we had between all the timelines and Breath of the Wild, since it plays out in the same Hyrule as the previous game. I was anticipating this game for years. As soon as we knew a sequel was happening for one of the most innovative open world games to date, I was hooked. I was excited, I couldn't wait. I stated in my previous video about Tears of the Kingdom that Breath of the Wild reinvented the wheel, and Tears of the Kingdom would kind of do the same thing in a very odd way. The story in Breath of the Wild was a bit plain, lackluster, and almost boring to me. This mainly had to do with the fact that I absolutely hated the Divine Beasts and how these had a major role in the game. I know they weren't necessarily mandatory, but in order to get the full story of the game, you just had to follow through with them. Now it's totally different, or at least slightly. The new temples each give you major plot points and make sure you're slowly uncovering the full story, but the majority of the lore is found outside of the dungeons. You find the story by exploring, and this makes it incredibly rewarding to slowly uncover all the weird things that have been going on. This makes it feel way more engaging and doesn't end up feeling like you're playing through a movie-like script. Sure, the dungeons still have a lot of lore behind them, which, by the way, are way better than the Divine Beasts ever had, but they don't feel like you need to finish them to understand the major plot point. They just each have their own smaller plots, and that makes it feel like an old school Zelda game. Smaller plots divided between every smaller dungeon, coming together for a major plot. But if you don't end up doing that in this game, as in finishing everything, you will understand most of what's happening nonetheless. This way of storytelling almost reminds me of the incredible way that Metroid Prime did it, and makes it one of the best shooters of all time. It makes uncovering the story engaging, rewarding, and it manages to grab your attention for the majority of the game. It also makes sure that you keep hooked to this game and could actually get addicted to it, just because you want to know where the next clue is, what the next cutscene might be or entail. It's a unique way of storytelling, and I love it. The other thing that I love about this game is the gameplay itself. The way it plays, flows, and even feels is truly like no other. I mean, we had Breath of the Wild, which was pretty well done, but you can clearly feel and tell that that was just testing the waters of what might be possible in an open world Zelda game. Tears of the Kingdom takes this to new heights, and we'll talk about that in the coming couple of minutes. You can definitely tell it's being held back a tiny bit by the console that it's on, but honestly, that's fine. This proves the fact that a great game isn't about performance, but about the way the game plays, feels, and even makes you as a player feel. There are frame drops here and there, but it isn't game breaking to me, and probably neither to a lot of players. Where we started our journey on a great plateau in Breath of the Wild, we do the same thing here, yet slightly different in Tears of the Kingdom. We start at a central sky island where we are introduced to our new arm with different abilities compared to before. Ascend, Ultra Hand, Recall, and Fuse are gathered quite quickly through a short set of shrines and are brought to us in a fast pace. I feel like new players could spend hours just wandering the starting area, as we all did with Breath of the Wild, but with Breath of the Wild players, you know what's up and you just want to get out of that starting area as soon as you can. Once you've done that, the world's at your feet, literally. We get a similar yet different view from Hyrule this time around, which makes sense. Tears of the Kingdom is supposed to be a similar yet different experience than before, and we'll get into that later. The new abilities make it extremely fun to play around and tinker with your imagination and the surroundings. Everything that's even the tiniest bit movable is probably buildable, creating airplanes, cars, even damn moving buildings. You name it. All this summed up makes it so interesting to keep playing what you can build next, where do you get different parts, and what is there to explore even beyond what we currently know. This game manages to give you that same exciting gameplay that Breath of the Wild managed to give you and triples it. All of this is just talking about the regular Hyrule and Sky Islands. A part that Nintendo didn't really show or talk about are the chasms. And oh boy, these chasms are everywhere. Some are hidden in plain sight, others are pretty well hidden and only accessible in certain ways. Once you enter one of these, the way the depths make you feel is odd. There is a lingering uncertainty because you can't see a thing. There is a damaging gloom everywhere to be found, but most of the times when you see it, you're already too late and it probably took a bit of damage. You have different ways to light up the environment. You could build some stuff with lights, throw bright bloom seeds, and all other things, but the caves just keep going. If you fire an arrow straight ahead, you'll be baffled by the distance it manages to create. This place is huge, as big as the regular Hyrule. So we have a map about twice, or maybe with all these Sky Islands summed up, 2.5 times bigger. It's genuinely insane and frightening to traverse these dark crypts trying to find whatever clues and bits about the story that you can. One of the best details in these chasms that I've found is that all the light roots that you find are actual shrines in Hyrule. They're literally connected and act as a power source of some sorts for the shrines on the surface. If you're ever lost and need to find a source of light or a shrine, you know, either one of those, switch between the two different maps and you'll manage just fine. The way Nintendo manages to intertwine all of these elements make it an insanely fluent and flawless gameplay. It's not perfect. I enjoy having items being somewhat buildable and collectible. It's not like old school games where you have iron boots to walk in water or hookshots to zip around on the map, but most items that were once in a Zelda game are now craftable or fusible. So that's fine, it makes up for that. I just wished the vows of sages weren't such a damn oddity. The powers you get from defeating the temples are great, truly. But the way you use them or activate them pissed me off the moment I cleared my first temple. In order to use a power of a sage mid-battle, I have to turn my character towards them, press a button and then aim it at the enemy. If I didn't get hit in the meantime while finding my way to get to my sage. Honestly, I also didn't like how the power of the divine beasts worked in Breath of the Wild. The whole way these things worked, they weren't for me. I missed the old power-ups that we had that were just toggled on and off, except for power bracelets or something similar, which were status effects. The way they made the power of the sages work just feel weird, and I can't be the only one that feels this way. Another thing that really pissed me off in the beginning and had to get used to for a bit is the damage that enemies do. It's only logical for enemies to do more damage when Ganon actually reawakens and uses his power to create a huge army. Especially compared to Breath of the Wild, enemies are way stronger. It takes only 2 or 3 hits and you're dead, no matter how many arts you have. It's a bit of a learning curve. The combat feels more challenging this way. It's fine, but it was a weird surprise when I started fighting and died 20 times to just a regular bokoblin or something. Besides these points though, this game is truly a work of art to play and it feels so seamless that it's almost second nature of what's happening in the game. Everything just makes sense without explaining anything at all. It truly gives you the immersion that no other game managed to do. And that to me makes the gameplay perfect. The music in The Legend of Zelda has always been one of its strongest elements. It manages to encode the tales and the games itself into the brain like no other. The original soundtrack for Tears of the Kingdom is amazing, but feels less nostalgic than other games. But then again, nostalgia only takes place after quite some time has passed. The score overall is great. It's a little less in the face with its music, but when it's there, it hits in the right spots. The music changes depending on the weather, location, and even if you're flying from the sky or not. I love the way the bosses and environments have different tunes depending on the stage at which you're in. The bosses have differentiating, yet in the base it's the same sound and music. Areas change their music before and after you've cleared the mysterious troubles in said area. And the weather system that also changes the tunes up just make it a fluent and flawless gameplay experience. It all hooks together. I'm not a music expert, but I just know a lot of thought and heart went into the creation of this OST. Even iconic songs from previous games make a slight appearance or get referenced in certain tunes or by some character. There's a whole band that plays different Zelda songs, traveling through the lands of Hyrule. It's nice to see all the hints and nods towards all the other games that revolved around music so much, since Breath of the Wild basically didn't, and Tears of the Kingdom just makes up for that. I think a great soundtrack is created when it's noticeable during major plot points, dungeons, or other important locations, and just slightly there when you're out exploring in the wild. It creates a seamless transition and experience for the ears and manages to make the gameplay experience even better. And all of that just happens in Tears of the Kingdom. Sure, you hear the music play when you're walking around, but it kind of disappears after a while. Not because it's bad, but because it's so fluent with the world itself. To be honest, some songs even created a couple of tears in my eyes. No pun intended. I've always been a sucker for music in the Zelda games, and Tears of the Kingdom manages to make me feel the same way I did as a kid. All of this summed up and put together, Tears of the Kingdom manages to be a game like no other. Nintendo truly managed to reinvent the wheel a second time with this game. Yes, it's odd here and there because of the nearly limitless gameplay elements, but that makes for an insane experience that I'm glad to be experiencing. Tears of the Kingdom manages to give you a feeling of exploration, danger, and calmness all at the same time. This is due to the weird new environment and amazing soundtrack that supports it. Some players will absolutely hate this game, and somewhere I get that. But to many fans, this is a Zelda game that was always dreamt of. Create your own adventure. Feel the same feeling of unknown and exploration. If you've played Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom manages to give you the same feeling you had when you booted that game for the first time. The amount of references, hints, and clear indicators that Tears of the Kingdom is an homage to Ocarina of Time and other titles make this not only a nostalgic hit, but a nostalgic work of art. I recently got the question on stream whether or not to play this game and if you should play Breath of the Wild first. To answer that in order, yes, you should play this game. It's a title meant to be played, even if you're unfamiliar with The Legend of Zelda as a whole. This game manages to grab your attention. If you dislike open worlds, then you should probably stay away from this. Because it is, after all, a vast open world to explore, but one that lets you do so on your own terms, not in the Ubisoft way. And no, you shouldn't play Breath of the Wild right before this. I mean, you could, but the story doesn't necessarily benefit from it. Your experience may be a bit annoying even when you find out that the up arrow on the D-pad doesn't switch your abilities in Tears of the Kingdom, but the L button does. You don't want to know how many times I made that mistake. This game is a perfect standalone title, and major points of Breath of the Wild will be told about or hinted towards during your adventures in Tears of the Kingdom. My suggestion, just watch the full story videos on YouTube and start with Tears of the Kingdom if you've done that. Whatever you do, if you're only a little bit interested in Tears of the Kingdom, trust me, it's worth it. Somehow there's something here that fits everyone. Except for Zelda haters and people that don't enjoy fully open world adventures, but there's so much more to this game. I can't talk about it in such little time. I've been ranting for about 20 minutes probably at this point, but Tears of the Kingdom is simply put a legendary game. Nothing will ever be quite like it, and trust me, many will try. At this point, I've gotten about 60 shrines, and still loads of outfits to find. I also have better gear to get, and I better get started with it. I hope you enjoyed my bit of a review, bit of a rant. I just hope it was helpful and that you'll be able to decide whether or not to pick this game up. Just a heads up, if you're hoping there's a stream coming soon or a video, I'll be back in about 2.5 weeks. I've got a trip planned, so I'll be enjoying that. Until that time, check out some of my other stuff. Have a good day, morning, night, whatever it is for you. Just make it count, and I'll see you next time.